I'm joined today by a lovely selection of panellists, all Kairos members and staff. So I'll just introduce them as well and give them some time to introduce themselves in case I don't do it justice. So first we've got Liz, who is a project assistant at Kairos and dedicated to community working and mum to a lovely dog called Lola, who you might hear throughout this call, who we all know very well by now. And Arpie Martin is a working mum of 2 children and she'll be sharing the challenges, chaos, joy, and the joy of balancing work, home, and online classes for her children. Emmagayle Harper is a freelance student journalist and blogger. She lives with a disability called muscular dystrophy and has been shielding since March 2020, and I believe recently got vaccinated, so yay. And finally, Suzanne McGlip volunteers at Kairos and also volunteers at Homestart Renfrewshire and White Cart Credit Union. And during the pandemic, these volunteer roles have been on pause, so she's been focusing on homeschooling, which brings its own unique challenges. So I will go through a short introduction about the topic that we're talking about today, so women and COVID. And it's a very broad topic, and COVID has affected everyone in the world nearly. So today we're going to be focusing on how it's impacted in particular on women and yourselves, so women in Renfrewshire, to share people's different experiences. So just some facts and figures about how COVID has affected women. So although men have paid disproportionately with their lives in the pandemic, women seem to be bearing the brunt of the economic fallout. Women were 1.5 times more likely to be furloughed or lose their job than men. And this figure has increased for younger women. We know that more unpaid labour was completed by women before the pandemic. So I think the UN estimates 75%, and that's in the world. So 75% of invisible work is done by women. And this has increased during lockdown. A study found that 67% of mothers reported that they felt like the default parent to their children's needs, despite there being two parents at home. And the service sector which is made up predominantly of women employees working in jobs such as retail, hospitality, hairdressing and beauty, has been one of the hardest hit areas of employment. So that leads to long-lasting concerns about the future of women's employment. So in thinking about the future, austerity cuts could affect benefits. And we know from the last recession that these cuts disproportionately affected women. So there's concerns about that. So this has led some people to argue that the pandemic could push back against the gains that women have made in recent history. And I've got a quote from Aksa Ahmed, who works at the Global Institute for Women's Leadership. She says that progress on women's rights is hard won, but easily lost. So that's a bit doom and gloom to start us off, but that's the context that we're talking about today. And so my first question is just off the back of that, thinking about how the pandemic could push back against the progress on gender equality. I wondered if each of you could reflect on how COVID has impacted on your lives and just on your everyday life. And just before you speak, you can introduce yourself, because I realise I didn't give you a chance to do that. So yeah, so the first question, how has COVID impacted upon your everyday life? And feel free to just jump in when you're ready to speak.
Will I just start then, Annie?
That'd be great, Liz, thanks.
Okay, so as Annie says, I'm Liz. I'm the project assistant at Kairos. and worked with Annie and Katie and our other colleague Adiola. When the lockdown came, as to everybody, it was a big shock to us. Well, obviously at Kairos, we are primarily, our main thing is to be in contact with women and non-binary people and to share time with them, and obviously we couldn't do that, so we had to think of different ways of how we would have to still stay connected to people in the community, and we came up with quite a lot of good ideas. So hopefully some of you have experienced some of the things that we've done. For me personally, I live alone with, as Annie said, my dog Lola. Everybody knows Lola. And it was a big adjustment to be, what we had to do is work from home, and I had to learn a lot of technical things, which was quite difficult, being of a certain age, and not being brought up with computers and things. So that was a bit of a challenge. And I think the main thing for me was, I thought I was fine with being on my own and being in the house all myself. Just, I thought I was quite happy with my own company until I was forced into being there 24/7. And then once the restrictions got lifted a wee bit at the beginning, I thought, you know what, it's really nice to see people, and I felt more appreciative of people, and able to that, and it was more like of a privilege to be able to spend time with people. And I kind of felt that maybe I had taken things for granted before. So that was kind of, I guess for me, that was the biggest thing that the lockdown and this pandemic has made me think about. So that was me.
Thanks for sharing that, Liz. And yeah, I think that's probably the case for a lot of people who are living alone, that it wasn't necessarily a choice that they would make, knowing that a lockdown was going to happen. You know, you get to go and socialize despite living alone. So it's definitely a huge adjustment, and I can imagine it's not been an easy year. I'm definitely hitting the sight of my bedroom. Never thought I'd spend so much time in here. Suzanne, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say hi, I'm Suzanne. I had a couple of volunteer roles, as Annie said in the intro, and then basically they were just gone. Like Kairos, we've done some Zoom calls, some catch-ups, but you know, there was not meeting any people. Homestart, they weren't doing any sort of home visits, so there was no home visits. And then there was, we might meet people outside, and then it's like, no, we're not meeting anybody at all. So all of a sudden it went from being quite busy to sort of doing, there's some homeschooling to be done, and that was basically it. So there was quite a lot, it was almost like a bit of a, what am I doing? There's a kind of lack of purpose apart from helping with a bit of schooling, homeschooling. So you went from being quite busy to, it's like, yeah, let's go for a walk, let's go for 2 walks a day, you know, and there's only so many walks you can go on, and even that was getting a bit, you know, oh, a walk. So yeah, I just kind of felt lack of purpose, where am I? And that's almost going forward, it's like, what's this going to look like next week, next month, in 3 months, you know, are we going to get back to normal? We're talking about normality and we're all hoping for that, but what even is that going to look like? It's almost like a bit lost, do you know what I mean? And some people are living their best lives in lockdown and enjoying it and embracing it and learning new things, and I had loads of plans, but none of it's really kind of happened, you know. I almost a bit lost, sort of lack of purpose. And I don't know how I'm going to readjust, if and when we readjust, you know what I mean? That's kind of where I am just now.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. I think everyone's roles will have been shifted in some sense, and for you to have had so much that you did out of the house and with people, to then be confined at home.
Yeah,
That must have been a real shift.
Yeah, and also knowing that there is people, like whether it's Kairos or whether it's Homestart, there is people that would be desperate to see people to have a visit or whatever, and it's just like, you know, there's people struggling and there's just nothing you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely been still people wanting, you know, with mutual aid groups and people wanting to help their communities, but it is limited. We've certainly found that at Kairos that the roles are not as obvious, you know, with everything being online, and not everyone actually wants to do Zoom. So then what do you do? But yeah, no, thanks for sharing your experiences. And Emmagayle or Arpie, I wondered if you want to share how it's been for you.
Artie, if you want to go first. Okay.
You can go first if you want.
Hi everyone, I'm Emmagayle. This lockdown and COVID has been a real challenge for me in many ways. I'm currently studying journalism, so a very practical course that suddenly just became completely online in March 2020. Yeah, but I started shielding before then because I have a disability where I'm a wheelchair user, and essentially I'm clinically extremely vulnerable. So I got the vaccine a couple of months ago, so I'm quite relieved about that. But yeah, it's been a real tough one for me, having to adapt to being completely in the house. Not myself, I have my partner and my dad that I stay with and my dog, so I'm not alone, which I can understand will be really difficult for some people. But yeah, it's been definitely challenging mental health wise and even physical health wise, like not being able to go outside and get that vitamin D, like everyone else is going walks and things like that, like you were saying, Suzanne, and I'm just kind of staring out the window a bit like a cat.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, that's how it feels. You're just like, oh, everyone else is living their best lockdown life. But yes, definitely been really challenging. I started shielding the week before we officially went into lockdown because I could kind of see something coming. And as maybe the rest of you felt, we were like, oh, it's only going to be a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months at that. And then a year on, we're still in and out sort of thing. So that's how I've been kind of dealing with it, if you want to call it that.
Thanks, Emmagayle. And it's I can't really imagine how, you know, life would be without even those short walks. I think to have done that for a whole year, it must be really massively challenging. And you know, even though your partner and your dog are there, it's a lot of pressure on yourself and on them to kind of have that as the only contact. So yeah, thanks for letting us know, and I really hope you can get outside really soon. Arpie, final, last but not least.
Hello, my name is Arpie. I'm a volunteer in Kairos. The most challenging part was actually to get the time, being mother and having a job as well at the same time, manage the house. It's like all of a sudden, it's like you will think that they will be in the house and you will have plenty of time, but when you're sitting there in the middle of your house, you will think, oh, how am I gonna do all of these things? Like they will be on online learning, and then at the same time you want to work so you can help. So like all of the worries of the studies for your children, and then at the same time you have to work or help for your financial stuff. So it kind of worried. You're worried with things in the future or the next day, what's gonna happen. So it's basically my main thing when it all started, the panic and all these things that you have to do. So it's hard, but because it's been a year, so it's kind of, you're getting used to it now. So it's like it's getting easier day by day. So that's been me for the whole year. Is it year? It's been a year almost since the lockdown started.
Yeah, it has been a year. And Arpie, I feel like you're having to juggle everything right now. It's a bit of a juggling act for you, and I'm actually amazed you've managed to continue volunteering at Kairos and joining events like this. So thanks for your time today, and thanks to the rest of the panel as well. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of you spoke about the challenges of being isolated and being at home, either whether it's alone for you, Liz, or even just bit shielding for you, Emmagayle. And I wondered when we did a community survey we had 52 out of 75 respondents expressing that the major challenge that they were facing was loneliness or isolation. And so I just wondered if that resonated with yourselves, if that's something you'd experienced, or even if not, how the pandemic has affected you emotionally. I know you said panic and worry, Arpie, and yeah, is that something you've experienced? Liz?
I think previously in my life, I have experienced isolation, but that was always chosen isolation. I think the thing being with the pandemic and COVID, there was no choice. You know, like I've had issues with my mental health and addictions and stuff like that over the years, and have chosen to isolate myself and be in the house. And I think taking that choice away from people, like Emmagayle's saying, you know, she had no choice for her, basically for her sake of her life. She had to stay home and had to stay in. And I felt, you know, in a way, looking at Emmagayle then, I was quite privileged because I could walk to the shops and back, and that's all I was doing, or walking the dog and back, and that was fine, but at least I was getting out a bit. But I think it was that whole thing of the choice taken away from you. You've got no choice. You have to, this is the way the world is, and you have to be there and have to do, you have to stay isolated. You can't see other people. I felt that, and that played quite a big bit on my mental health. And I think I can see, and I know from statistics and things like that, over this last year, addictions and people has actually risen quite a lot because of people and their mental health and the isolation that COVID's actually brought about. That it is a fact that people with addictions have either worsened, or people that have been in recovery have maybe relapsed, and people that have maybe never had an addiction have maybe turned to some sort of substance like alcohol or drugs to try and get them through, which is quite a frightening thing to have happened to people.
Yeah, totally, Liz, and I'm glad you've touched on recovery and addiction, because I think we're only just seeing the start of what it's going to look like after the pandemic. Is, you know, it's a thing of coping, isn't it? And what we turn to cope with negative things and things going on outside. So if it is drink or drugs or gambling, then yeah, that's maybe what people have turned to in COVID.
Mhm.
And you also, yeah, you touched on mental health as well, and yourself, Emmagayle. So I wondered, does anyone else want to talk about loneliness or isolation?
I think what Liz said absolutely hit the nail on the head. Like it's either your life or your mental health. That's how it felt. It was like before even the pandemic started, like full lockdown. I emailed my lecturers and I was like, it's either my life or education, and it feels like choosing between the two every time. It's either I can go out and go and see people and socialize and things that risk my own health and my life, or stay inside and be safe, but with the effects of mental health, like for mental health especially. And I think Liz was right when she said like lockdowns exacerbated a lot of problems, like with addiction, mental health things that people already are dealing with, and I mean a lot of things have just been exacerbated by it, especially mental health.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks, Emmagayle. Yeah, what you said there about choosing, you know, do you go out and see someone and that's good for your mental health, but then risking your physical health, and having to choose between the two just seems totally unfair, because, you know, we need to look after both, and there's things that we need to do to nourish both. So to be then said, yeah, told like, no, you can't go outside, and how damaging that is to your mental health long term. But hopefully we're coming to the end.
And I think it's that put on you pressure, you know, it's the choice, and your kind of human right to actually live your life and go outside and stuff like that is totally taken away, especially for people that are having to shield like Emmagayle. And that's just, I think it's the choice sometimes. It's when it's taken away from you, it can be worse and more affecting your mental health.
Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
Oh yeah, hi Anne.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you couldn't hear me maybe. I felt personally it's been quite hard not seeing grandchildren. That's the hardest thing for me. I've been shielding as well, and not seeing any of my grandchildren for at least 6 months is pretty hard, especially over Christmas, New Year, things like that. That's my hardest part.
Yeah, I think people's not being able to see friends and families had taken its toll this year.
Yeah.
Arpie, do you want to come in? Arpie, were you going to say something before?
Or I was just gonna say it's really, really hard, especially if well, for me, it's like, although you have your children around you, your family around you, your husband, you see people sometimes in your work, but at the end of the day, you're missing a face-to-face conversation, adult conversation. You're enjoying a conversation with your children, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like you're feeling of lacking of something that you really want to see someone to talk with. So it's like this is the moment when your mind is your best enemy. Like, I want to go out, I want to see people, but it's just you.
Sorry, Arpie, you got cut off at the end there.
Oh, I would just say, sorry. It's just as much as possible you want to see people, talk to adults or friends, but you just can't. This is the thing that the COVID is not letting you to do, is because of this restriction. So it's really hard, most especially if you're a grandmother, you cannot see your grandchildren, or you cannot see other family members. It's just hard.
Yeah, thanks, Arpie. And off the back of that, and just seen in the chat that Susan said, I think prior to the pandemic, she probably would have welcomed the opportunity to be at home with her partner more, but being together in the same space 24/7 for a year has been very challenging at times. And I think, yeah, living alone, you probably have the challenge of it's only your own company, but whoever you live with, it's going to be more company than we're used to having with each other. So yeah, I'm in my flat. I feel like we've become a family, even though we're just, friends sharing a flat. You got the same annoyances and arguments. So yeah, unless anyone else wants to come in there, I think we'll have a quick 5-minute comfort break. That's okay. So feel free to turn your cameras off, and we'll come back. We'll come back at 3 minutes past 5. Okay, welcome back everyone. Hope you've got your cups of tea. So yeah, before we open it out to everyone, in case anyone else wants to jump in with a question or a contribution, I've just got one more question for the panel. Trying to uplift the kind of mood of the chat a little bit, because we spoke about addiction and mental health, and I wondered if anyone could share anything positive that they found has helped them kind of cope through the roller coaster of 2020 and now 2021. And so yeah, what are some of the coping strategies that have helped you get through it, if any? And you know what, it doesn't matter if they're binge eating chocolate, if that's helped. Liz is ready.
Yeah, binge eating chocolate. Yeah, I think I've watched more box sets and telly stuff, and since I don't know, and I was never really a telly person, but I quite enjoyed watching some of these series on the like Breaking Bad and stuff like that. I've been watching them, but I think for me the positive things about it that's come out is kind of like moving on from the negative bits, but feeling that I didn't think I needed other people, but that actually I do. And actually, I think it's made me more grateful for the people that are in my life. And it's made me not be so, not that I'm one for rushing about and stuff like that, but not to be so busy and to take time out and take time for people when they do need to just talk to you, whether it be just about a lot of rubbish or whether you want to talk about a lot of rubbish yourself, and actually that interaction with another human being, you know, even if it has been like going to Morrison's for your shopping and you take the time to thank them for being there, and you appreciate that they're working and they're putting themselves really in danger, I guess, as well, you know, their lives at danger to actually make sure that we're all provided for, and actually be more grateful for things like that. So I think it's brought about that kind of thing for me positively.
Yeah, I think we see that outside, Liz, as you say, like you're appreciating the guys that are coming around emptying your bins, the people that are working in Morrison's. I think even when we're going out these walks, people are going, hiya, being friendly.
Yeah.
You know, people are appreciating people more.
Yeah.
And again, that's probably one of my coping strategies, the group chats, the, you know, phoning my sister, stuff like that is definitely what helps me, is actually speaking to people, even if it's just over the phone.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Both Liz and Suzanne saying, thinking about what we take for granted and then becoming more appreciative of it. And I think when we talk, a lot of people say, you know, I just want to get back to normal, and when are we going to get back to normal? And at Kairos, we've had some discussions about what do we want normal to be, and you know, what is this new normal, and could it include having more kindness and compassion for each other, and trying to see things from each other's point of view? Because, you know, even things like getting to know your neighbors, that's something that I not thought about beforehand, and then now it's whoever, that's the only people I see around in the corridor, in the shared garden. And I think now I know my neighbors and that we all look out for each other. And you know, there's certain things like that you think I'd like to continue that even after we're past the worst of it. And Emmagayle or Arpie, is there anything positive that's helped you through it?
Well, that's very nice of you, Annie, that you know your neighbors well. But the most positive thing that happened to me for this lockdown is spending more time with your children, and also, well, aside from eating, see that one there, it's all from eating, but to cook more for your family. And also, aside from that, you're learning the new favorites of your children, you know, the songs, new vocabulary. I have nine turning 10-year-old and 5-year-old boy. So just at the end of the day, although the day was hard, like working and balancing things, you will just realize how lucky you are that you're with your family, that all's well, you have roof over your head. So this kind of small things that you become appreciative, just like what Liz was saying, you become more appreciative with the things, that small things, but you will appreciate them more.
Thanks, Arpie, and I'm impressed you're still appreciating your children 1 year on with the amount of time they've had at home. I know a lot of mums have just been keen for schools to go back, and you can see why that's a priority now. You know, homeschooling, no one necessarily expected to ever have to do that. So I'm glad you're still finding some joy in it. I wouldn't blame you if you weren't.
That's the only option I have, is to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I've came to appreciate in lockdown, like, well, one of the only good sides of it is I didn't realise how much I appreciated a good group chat. And I think that's the only way you can really connect with people now, unless you have that luxury of going out to see them and stuff. Like, when I started lockdown, I'd only been in the course that I was in at college for a few months. I wasn't really close to anyone, but by the end of it, because I've not seen them, the people in the class for over a year, we're closer now because we've been able to speak almost every day. But another thing that I've learned to kind of appreciate it and like is kind of taking time away from the screen, like having that work kind of life balance, because it's quite difficult to do, especially when you're sitting in your house all the day and it becomes your workplace. It's definitely, it's not normal, even though it is our new normal. It's still quite hard, but it's having that kind of cut off, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, definitely, Emmagayle, and I think it's a reminder to us all that maybe we don't want to be sat at screens all day every day, despite the temptation. And I can imagine, you know, anyone who's on it a lot, for example, I've heard young people talk about being on social media like 8 hours a day, and how that must be impacting both your eyes and your mental health. Yeah, I think, and schools all being online as well and having to look at a screen. And if you're fortunate enough to have a screen, as I know there's a lot of people who've not all had access, who have been really cut off. So yes, I hope it's the plan going forward is that we'll be seeing each other in person and not on on a screen. Yeah, I thought maybe now we can open it out to anyone else in the room. If you want to pop a contribution in the chat or say something out loud, feel free to jump in about your own experience of the lockdown of the past year, or maybe something that you see for the future of the new normal. And I think there's been some comment in the chat.
I was just going to say I saw Kath's hand sneak up and sneak down again.
Oh,
Yeah.
hi Kath.
Yeah. I found the whole year actually just unbelievably so different from anything that's ever happened. And I've got family local, my 2 daughters are local, but I really missed the cuddles and the time and the silly chats and just being able to be with them. Although I could meet them for a walk and things like that, we still kept in touch. However, I must say that Kairos has kept me really busy over the last year, and I presume it will happen again next year. I'll just keep busy. But even my family out with my own 2 daughters were saying, "What are you up to this week, Mum?" And my sister would say, "What are you doing today?" "Oh, I'm doing this for Kairos, I'm doing that, I'm going out delivering." So for me, Kairos has been great, and it's been great to reach out to all these different people, and I've tried to meet up with some of the girls for walks or chats when we could. So it's been a very positive for me, Kairos. However, I have missed the connection with my family. So that's the sad part. At a family funeral, you couldn't embrace anyone. You just had to say sorry with your mask on, and that was quite hard. But overall, I think I've done okay, and I've managed to keep going. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks for sharing, Kath. Yeah, and it just shows how that doesn't feel human, you know, if being at a funeral and not being able to hug anyone. And I didn't realize I loved hugs as much as I do now that I can't do it. So again, yeah, it's thinking what we've taken for granted, and hopefully once we are able to see family more, kind of being more appreciative of it, and yeah, thinking about that as quality time rather than a chore.
I think I think you were saying at the start, Annie, that the vaccine kind of seems like the light at the end of the tunnel, and that definitely seems to be where we're headed now, like with more and more people getting it and things kind of being let out of that, like restrictions wise. But yeah, I definitely feel quite privileged. I don't know if anyone else has had the vaccine here, but I feel quite privileged and quite lucky to have had it, and I feel a lot more protected now that everyone in my household has had it. Last week my partner and my dad got it, so I feel like we're on the right path, and I feel like it's not going to be much longer until things are somewhat back to normal. I'd hope. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Emmagayle. I wondered what your first plan was now you've been vaccinated, once we're out of lockdown again.
I'm gonna go see my gran. I'm gonna go see my grandpapa. I've not seen them since Christmas. I saw them outside, and I saw them at my birthday, which is like literally 6 months apart. My birthday's in June, and I can see another lockdown birthday happening if things don't pick up, but I hope not, because I don't think I can deal with another one. It was a novelty at the start, and now it's that I don't want another birthday in lockdown.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say about it being a novelty, and then the novelty wearing off. I think that would resonate with a lot of people, because everyone was baking and everyone was, posting things they'd made and making crafts, and finally getting around to this thing on my to-do list. And now I don't feel it's like that. I don't know if anyone else shares that experience, but it's much more kind of heavy hearts, and people kind of waiting and waiting for things to reopen. Liz, did you want to jump in?
I think you're right there. I think it both you and Emmagayle, like at the beginning, although it was such a horrific thing that was happening in the world, it was kind of like, oh, we're in lockdown, what are we going to do? Oh, let's just you heard everybody going, I've tidied this cupboard, well, me myself, I was decorating this and that, and everything was getting cleaned, and you could hear everybody was like doing the similar things. And like what you're saying, Annie, I think it's just a case that everybody's just exhausted by the whole thing now, and it's just that really, well, I can only guess speak for myself, but I'm just so looking forward to it, and I think hopefully it's coming at a good time. Spring's coming, and and lighter nights and everything, and it's just got a wee bit of kind of hope in the air that we will be getting back into able to see people and all that kind of again, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people, even people that have been really positive through it, are kind of getting to the stage they're going, I'm just a bit fed up. I'm just a bit fed up now. I don't think I can do this for much longer, and I think it's a hope to hopefully it'll be coming to an end.
Yeah, and Katie's just put in the chat, festival in real life next year, ? Well, I hope it's a definite. So yeah, things like these events which have been so special, but in real, we'd have preferred to have them in person and see you all in person. And I think for me, it's thinking about the Invisible Women event that was run by the Equalities Collective just after I'd started at Kairos. And there was over 100 people there in the town hall, and the energy and buzz of being at a real life event, you can't really recreate that online. We're doing our best, but yeah, so hopefully for next year we'll have something like this, but in person with 100 people.
Yeah, and I know, and it's like when you chat with other people on these Zoom sessions and stuff, and it's like, right, what are we going to do? We're going to have and people start saying things, and everybody's getting dead excited about it. We'll have a wee picnic in the party, and we'll all go out and we'll all walk together, and it'll be great. And then we'll do this and we'll do that, and it's, I don't know, it's just a kind of wee bit of excitement, kind of, I feel, building up for this, coming year, and I hope it happens, because I think everybody's just so ready to do daft stuff, you know.
Plenty of daft stuff with us.
Yes.
Suzanne?
And we might even like emerge as a sort of better society, you know, we will be a bit more thoughtful, a bit more considerate, as you talked about, the people in Morrison's, you know, be more grateful, more appreciative, you know, that's what I think. We're all just going to, you know, like Susan said, after being in the house for a year, Susan, you'll just be like, yes, you know, everybody will be a bit more tolerant, maybe.
Yeah, no, thanks, Suzanne. I think that's some takeaways you've got to think about. Kate says in the chat, the house was sparkling clean at the beginning, but now I need visitors to get me going. So she's looking forward to that. Yeah, so it's funny how much, you know, just having someone around makes you make the effort to make a meal or to tidy your house up. And Sean says they've cleaned the whole house as it's Mother's Day tomorrow and looking forward to a glass of martini and hopefully breakfast in bed. Those are the small things. Arpie, were you going to say something?
I was going to comment on Kate's comment there that the house is sparkling clean. My house never. I just left the ironing and all of the cleaning, the toys everywhere. It's just never ending. So I was saying, what's the point of cleaning? It's just going to be after 5 minutes when they saw it's clean and it's all away, they're just going to scatter it again. So I was like, oh, I have the option not to do it. I don't have any visitors anyway.
Yeah, it's easy to just let it go. So I think Susan McKinstry, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, just when you were talking about some of the positives from it, although it's for all of us, it's been a very difficult year. I think especially in the first lockdown, if you like, or the first phase of lockdown, this was true that it was the kind of grassroots community organisations or kind of mutual aid groups, or even just individuals, were the things that really kept us going. You know, that we're checking in to say, do you need anything? Do you need any shopping brought? Do you know, checking in that you're doing okay? And I think, although they're not necessarily, as I say, particularly when it comes to the organisations, although they're not thought of as essential workers, they absolutely are. They were the things that were kind of there to catch people in a lot of cases, and it sounds like Kairos has been an example of that as well. I think, yeah, going forward, it's kind of amplified the work that a lot of community organisations do.
Yeah, Susan, I agree. A lot of people have said that, you know, those groups were there when the government wasn't, and were the quickest to jump on, you know, how do we support each other? And yeah, just thinking about the leadership that we've experienced over the pandemic and the promises for Christmas that were then taken away, and you know, now this promise of we'll be completely free again in summer. I'm definitely a bit dubious about that one, but yeah, I wondered if anyone had any reflections on how the pandemic's been handled by the government, or the kind of effects of the way that it has to be community groups filling the gaps. I realise that's quite a wide question, so
I don't know, it might be something that no people might not agree with, but I think this situation, this whole pandemic, is something that's never happened. It's worldwide. It's never happened, and a lot of people are like, oh, the government this and they're bad and they're this and they're that, the next thing. But at the end of the day, they're individuals that are going through it themselves as well, and it's something that they didn't know how to do it, and they didn't know what to do. And I know there has been mistakes, and you know, rightfully so, things like care homes and things like that, things should have been dealt with sooner and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we were dealing with something that we'd never dealt with before. So I think we've got to be kind of grateful that with what we've got, rather than with what's not happened, and not dwell on the things that didn't happen and the things that went wrong. You've got to really think, well, more on the what the good things that have come out of it, and what the positives that the government have done.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Liz. Katie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think it's a really good point that Liz makes, that it's a really difficult period and nobody really knew what to do. I think the thing that I wish for anyone that's leading anyone is that they just say, I got that wrong, when they make a mistake. And I think that would be the one thing that I would change about, if we could change the way that anyone's responded during this crisis, it would be, when you make a mistake, just say, do you know what, I really got that wrong there and I'm really sorry, but I just did what I thought was best at the time and it turned out to be the wrong thing. Because I think that's the most reassuring thing, because that helps you see that that person is a human being. And it also kind of breeds compassion instead of feeling like you need to be right all of the time, because we do get things wrong, we do make mistakes. And like Liz says, this is a completely new scenario.
Yeah, I totally think you're right there, Katie. That is the one thing that I would say. It's, I think the just lumping it together, the government and people in power, if you like, is to say, you know, well, yeah, maybe we didn't get that quite right, and we're doing the best we can. Maybe you're absolutely right. That's one thing that I think should have maybe happened.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think when you think about it, the government, like the UK government, not the Scottish government, and the people making the kind of lockdown rules, majority of them are men. And I wonder if that's something that speaks to kind of the makeup of the government, that no one was willing to admit they'd made a mistake. It's just reminded me of the Women in Work event that we had yesterday evening, where we were talking a bit about kind of confidence and femininity and masculinity and how it affects career choices, and also having that imposter syndrome. And I just don't feel at this point that the leadership has that imposter syndrome. You know, they're not willing to say, I messed up and I got something wrong. And yeah, I think that's caused a lot of anger. I feel a lot of anger from people. Emmagayle?
I just wanted to kind of further on your point, Annie. I completely agree. It seems like, especially within the UK government, it is white, able-bodied, cisgender men, and it very feels that way, especially coming from a disabled point of view. It very feels like this, like even the easing of restrictions is targeted towards not just white men, but people that would benefit, if that makes any sense. It feels like people that need the most help, like disabled people, minority ethnic groups, people living in poverty, have been kind of left by the wayside. And it's been quite upsetting to see, and it's definitely emphasised some barriers and some inequalities. Like for instance, during I think it was the first or maybe second lockdown, when Nicola Sturgeon was saying about that disabled people weren't forgotten, even to hear that from the Scottish government, I was literally in tears, because by the UK government, I felt forgotten. I felt like, actually just in general, I felt forgotten at that point. It was like, just disabled people shield, and like older people shield, and we'll get back to you when we can. And it just feels like it's definitely furthered and emphasised inequalities within society. It's quite concerning. I think that it was mishandled, definitely, and I think something needs to be said about that.
Yeah, thanks, Emmagayle, for sharing, and how that kind of affects you emotionally, you know, when you see that you've been forgotten or left out of policy. Yeah, and I think that's a really nice kind of way to wrap up, as a kind of takeaway, is how the leadership has meant that whoever's in positions of power is is allowed to go to the pub, for example, before, just thinking of like pubs opening before hairdressers, or shops opening before schools, and who's been prioritised. And I don't think it's been women, and like you said, Emmagayle, especially not Black and minority ethnic or disabled or non-straight women. So I think I've just run over a tiny bit. So I've seen Kate's pulled up the poll. If everyone wouldn't mind filling that in for us before you head off. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Arpie, Emmagayle, Suzanne and Liz for joining us today. I feel like we could have had an even longer discussion. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and also to all the guests who many have come to the whole of the festival, and we really appreciate that you've turned up and contributed as well. So thanks everyone for joining us, and pop in the poll before you head off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Annie. Have a lovely night, everyone.
Oh, Japan.
Thank you. Come to the quiz. Come to the quiz.
Panelists just want to stay for 5 so we can. Oh.